It's nice to be here at the Chamber, especially when the story is largely one of good news. So I'm going to walk through some of the economic highlights of the year just passed, and then touch on a few of the things that we hope to accomplish this term, and even at this early date to talk about some successes. But first of all, the local economy. Sometimes I think we've become so accustomed to talking about our past struggles with the Hamilton economy that we don't recognize it when things have significantly improved. That's not to say that we don't have continuing challenges, but let's take a moment to celebrate some real successes. Well, first of all, we have some great new players at the table. McMaster President Patrick Dean has already begun collaboration with our office regarding the university's interest in helping our downtown. New Police Chief Glenn DeCare has implemented new approaches to policing that have had immediate impact on the perception and reality of a safe and secure city. And I'd like to acknowledge Chief DeCare, who is with us this morning. Chief, thanks for coming. Chief Glenn DeCare. And I know Patrick Dean is here, and Rob McIsaac has also been working in his new role very closely with the City of Hamilton. So this is the kind of new collaborations that are taking place that are really wonderful for us. You'll recall that the previous council voted to increase its investment in the Economic Development Department, and there were those who questioned the wisdom of that investment. But I think you will see today the early returns suggest overwhelmingly that the money was well spent. First big hit in terms of business attraction in 2010, the announcement that Canada Bread would spend $100 million to build a 338,000 square foot facility in the Red Hill Business Park, and a further boost to Hamilton's food processing sector, which is becoming one of our major economic clusters. And then later in the year came the arrival of the German steel giant Max Eicher, who revived a nearly 1 million square foot facility that had been idled by U.S. Steel. Again, another $100 million plus investment and 125 jobs, with a prospect of the job total doubling over the next 3 years. It was really something to stand in that plant when we had the ribbon cutting and be surrounded not only by some of their key management people and Mr. and Mrs. Eicher, but about 70 workers in hard hats who were and steam coming out of some of the machinery. It was so exciting. And more to come. And while we're talking about these investments, we have to note that just last month, ArcelorMittal Dofasco announced that they will invest $250 million in new finishing operations, and that's on top of the $100 million they spent last year on improving their primary steelmaking operations. And the great thing about those investments, most of the money gets spent right here in Hamilton. It's no surprise that all of this investment is reflected in the building permit figures produced by Neil Everson's department. And for the first time in history, thanks to some of the big investments that I just talked about, Hamilton hit the 1 billion with a B mark in building permits issued. That put us ahead of Mississauga for the first time. I mentioned that to Hazel McCowney the other day, and she told me never mind. Looking, well, she said, I don't care what the judge said, so she probably doesn't care what I said. That's Hazel. She's a great leader, and leadership is what it's all about. If you look at the industrial and commercial totals, as everybody knows, the more industrial commercial assessment we have, the less load on the homeowner's tax bill. Well, Hamilton has outstripped all the other GTA centers in the industrial commercial assessment at over $300 million. That's incredible growth. And you remember what happened in October 2008. That was the beginning of the global downturn or recession. Let's look at the unemployment rate in Hamilton compared to other communities. We see we were consistently below the unemployment rate for Canada, for Ontario, and also below the average for a number of similar sized communities. Right now, the unemployment rate in Ontario is 8.1%. The unemployment rate in Hamilton is 6.9%. Thank you, Neil Everson, and all your crew for helping us to achieve that. We've touched on some of the mega projects that were undertaken or completed this year, but in fact, they are only part of the 50-odd new commercial industrial projects that launched in 2010. Not everything is mega. Some 25 new tenants settled in the Port of Hamilton or expanded their operations and are expanding their operations. Some announcements are still to come. Just a couple of examples being the new $10 million grain terminal by Parrish and Heimbeckler on Pier 10. And I was delighted with that for so many reasons. It's there because New Canada bread, so you bring the grain in. And so my enthusiasm for railways was wonderfully made happy by the new track being laid across Burlington Street. They tore up the old one. They're going to put new railway track in there to get the grain cars in and out of that project. And another one is the partnership that was formed by Zhou Ing with the Chinese company Daquo that will produce solar panels and some 200 jobs. During my campaign, I stressed the vitality of what I refer to as the North Industrial Corridor. We're not dead down there, and we're lively all over the city. In the south end of the city, in addition to the Canada Bread plant, Carmen's is building a hotel behind the banquet center, and CarStar Automotive is building a new office building to headquarter its growing Canadian operations. And both of these developments are a tribute to the hard work and ingenuity of the Mercanti family, who have been ahead of the curve for years in their willingness to invest in Hamilton. And the Mercantis only arrived in the 1950s. In the East End, I look at projects like the Janko steel expansion. These people have been here in the steel preparation and distribution business, steadily growing for more than 10 years, and last year added another 70,000 square feet to increase their processing capabilities. Janko is one of more than 30 companies that exist here in Hamilton that process steel they get from local producers and get it ready for the next user, be it automotive stamping parts, suppliers of construction steel, or appliance manufacturers. So when people talk about the number of steel jobs we used to have in Hamilton compared to now, they usually focus on the two big mills. But what they forget is the literally thousands of people who are still working in well-paying jobs in steel plants like Janko and Samuel and so many others. So if you want to get a full picture of steel in Hamilton, don't just drive down Burlington Street. Drive down Arvin Avenue in Stony Creek. That's where you'll see the sometimes forgotten piece of the steel business, and that's why steel continues to be such an important part of the Hamilton economy now and into the future. And by the way, that's something to be proud of. We are still Canada's steel city, and quite often I hear people saying, well, we're not steel anymore because we've got all these other things. Well, we are. There are 30 blast furnaces in North America. The blast furnace makes the basic iron. 4 of the 30 blast furnaces in North America are in Hamilton, Ontario, and ArcelorMittal Dofasco just spent $100 million fixing up one of theirs. So let's go to Lloyd Ferguson's area now, the Ancaster Industrial Park, where we see the new Tim Horton coffee roasting plant and Gates Automotive Manufacturers, who are now the biggest employer in the Ancaster Industrial Park with over 600 employees. Hamilton Health Sciences and St. Joseph's Healthcare continue to have huge capital projects underway at several campuses around the city. Downtown, we just celebrated the opening of the new Central Library and Farmers Market, as well as the new McNabb Street bus terminal. We also brought more HSR buses to the GO Center on Hunter Street with a new platform that GO paid for. And so what this did was allow us to add 31 on-street parking spaces along Houston, where the buses used to park beside the old Kresge building, the bingo parlor now, and 28 more new parking spots along the Gore, which means greater convenience for those who want to shop downtown. So it's all good. And don't let me forget to mention once again agriculture. Agriculture is a billion-dollar business in Hamilton, comprising 2/3 of our land mass. We have some of the best prime land in Canada and 2.4% of the best land in Ontario. In an area of food security and eat local initiatives, our situation is second to none in Canada, and we should celebrate this to an even greater extent. As a matter of fact, I just gave as a gift from the mayor of the city of Hamilton to the new consul general of China a wonderful bottle of wine that was produced within the city limits of Hamilton at Puttycomb's Orchards, which was created by the winemaker there, Lindsay Puttycomb. This is pure Hamilton. This is wonderful, and it doesn't get put on a bookshelf and forgotten. I know the Consul General will enjoy that someday soon. So that's the kind of thing that we have to look at, and I explained to him that when people come from China and they want to come to the Toronto area, come to the Hamilton area, that this agro-tourism is one of our growing sectors. And so, and they were quite excited about that. Also, you know that the Asians love our ice wines. And I know that a glass of ice wine in the Tokyo airport is about $75 a glass. Well, Puttycombs is producing an ice wine that they make out of apples. So that's an exclusive, pure, new Hamilton product. And I had some last night, and it's absolutely wonderful. So try the apple ice wine. Now, as I mentioned, things are definitely looking up, but none of this suggests that we don't face continued challenges in Hamilton. Your council has given staff a goal of achieving a zero tax increase, if possible, in an attempt to get Hamilton's tax competitiveness position more in line with other communities in the GTAH, and we add the H to the GTA. Like every other community in Ontario, we are challenged with aging infrastructure. And then there's the issue of poverty. It's been widely reported and discussed. There are serious gaps in income, health, even life expectancy between different parts of our city. And we need to build on some of the great work that has been underway thanks to groups like the Jobs Prosperity Collaborative, the Hamilton Community Foundation, so many others. And I have to acknowledge the work that is being done by our frontline staff in the city in community services under Joanne Pryal, who was here this morning, who are often the unsung heroes when it comes to improving the quality of life of the most marginalized of our residents. And I can think of so many examples when fire displaced a lot of people out of an apartment building and Joanne's crew found them places to stay for a couple of days until things could get organized. But, you know, in terms of our marketing focus, we can't allow ourselves to be perceived as the poverty capital of Canada. The best way to reduce poverty is to increase opportunity, and that means jobs and investment. And the stronger our economy, the more resources we will have to assist those whose circumstances may never allow them to fully participate in the opportunities being created. Hamilton's record is second to none in the provision of services to the economically disadvantaged. We should be proud of what we're doing to help, and we're going to continue to be a leader in Ontario and indeed Canada. Now, I mentioned Council's decision to try to hold the line on taxes, and perhaps this is as good a point as any to talk about what's really going on with Council as opposed to what is perceived to be happening. When I ran for this job, one of the things I said in the campaign was that if I had my way, things would be different in terms of the way our Council meetings operate. Some may have interpreted that to mean that we're going to raise the temperature and engage in a lot of confrontation, but that is not the reality. What I meant, and what we all want as councillors, and I know the councillors are here today will agree with me, is that we need to come together and work as a team. And I think the record shows that we have had success. Before I became mayor, council supported a number of my initiatives, testing children in code red neighborhoods for lead in their bodies, creating a loans program to help homeowners of modest means to remove old lead service lines. That program alone has achieved over $1 million in economic activity for the plumbing industry. The homeowners are able to pay off over 10 years very affordably the cost of removing those lead service lines, thus improving the value of their own properties. And we, with a wonderfully constructed loans program, would probably over the next 10 years replace every lead line in the city under this program. And you don't hear about that, but that's the fact. We built a new community center for the high-needs Beasley neighborhood and cleaning the contamination from that park next door. Now, the final motion of the previous council was approval of the pilot program that addressed the problems at the Pearl Company. So they're able to continue to operate, and we'll see what we can do with adaptive reuse of old industrial buildings under the program that was designed by Al Fletcher in our planning department. So we came into this term on a very cooperative basis. Even the stadium debate, which divided the city in 2010, at the end of the long road, the matter was settled by unanimous vote of council. And by the way, we've had more than one unanimous vote in the last few weeks, including our establishment of that goal of a zero tax increase. In the case of the stadium, we were successful because we were able to put all the players at the table with the single goal of reaching consensus. And that group included Council, the Tiger Cats, the Premier's Office, our local government members, Toronto 2015 and Infrastructure Ontario. And in a matter of 21 days, with that common goal, we made it. And we will use the same problem-solving approach to address the velodrome issue, and I predict we're going to be successful there as well. But one of the strengths of our council is that each councillor brings their own unique strengths and abilities to the table. And I talked about this in my inauguration speech. We have many diverse skills and backgrounds, and I want us to tap into those leadership qualities as we execute projects like the stadium, like the Scott Park Precinct development, and many others. It also means working closely with our city management and staff who are charged with making council policy happen. And again, using the stadium as an example, I can't praise highly enough the work of our city manager and his staff for bringing an incredibly complicated file through to completion against unbelievable time pressures and in a highly charged environment. Would you please acknowledge Chris Murray, who led that committee? Staff also came through for us by implementing the live streaming of all of our standing committee and council meetings, which has really opened city business up to the public and most importantly to the taxpayers. This was the first of my priorities that was implemented, and it was done within 2 months of inauguration. 2 minutes, 2 months. We've also worked hard from day one to develop a climate of trust and collegiality with our federal and provincial partners, our local members and ministers and the Premier's office, and so much of what we do is dependent on their support, as was evidenced in the stadium, and as I predict we will see with transit funding. The relationship is working to the benefit of Hamilton. My commitment to the community is to operate an open office where things are dealt with promptly and professionally, and the feedback we're getting suggests it is working, but of course it's a work in progress. Just 2.5 months in. We deliberately started out with a smaller staff because we wanted some time in the mayor's office to see where our resources could be best put to work to make the offices as efficient and responsive as possible. We will add resources when we see the need and value, but let me give you a couple of examples. The driver salary and benefits for the mayor to have a driver is about $75,000. Hazel McCallion is 90 years old, and she drove to that conference on the weekend. She's still driving her own car, so I think I can save that money. So that money is not being spent out of our budget. It'll be returned to surplus at the end of the year. My own chief of staff, who is here, who's done such a wonderful job, when we were looking over the salaries over the past several years of people in that position, she decided on her own that she would take $20,000 less on an annual basis than what had been paid. So in those two categories alone, our office has saved about $95,000, and we anticipate at least a 10% return of the surplus at the end of our first year. We don't know yet because we're working through it, but I think that all the departments in the city, any company, that's what you have to do. You have to say, what can we do with the resources we have? And then where do we have to add? And then, of course, intergovernmental was a big cost in previous administrations. Well, I was making a list of the people that we have either met with face-to-face or contacted personally, myself, or Chief of Staff, or both of us, and that includes the Premier, Minister Agilanides, Minister Bradley, former Minister McMeekin, Federal Minister Flaherty, Minister Lund, Minister Baird, Minister Kent, Minister Ritz, Senators Braley and Eggleton, corporate leaders such as the President of CPRL, and many, many others. No middle person. We called them up directly. We got the answers, saved a lot of time and money. So I come from a background of immigrants who arrived here with next to nothing. They made the most of what they had, and for the most part have thrived and become contributors to their community, their province, and their country. They are workers, they're professionals, they're developers, they are builders, some of whom are here today. And significantly, they're taxpayers. The lesson I learned was to live within our means and be sure to invest your hard-earned money into things that will bring back a return. This has been the formula for thousands of successful immigrants, and it's a good formula for our city. So ladies and gentlemen, as optimistic as I am today, We all know that there will be challenges over the next 4 years. There will undoubtedly be some missteps, hopefully not too many, but I believe we are on the threshold of a new era of prosperity for Hamilton, an era where the city will emerge from a long period of self-doubt and loss of confidence. I sense a willingness among my councillor colleagues to pull together, tackle the big issues, Pan Am, all-day GO service that is coming, transit enhancements, the LRT, and so on. And finally, since I become mayor, I'm pleased to report that our city has had extensive positive coverage in the national media. The stadium success was well documented through articles in the National Post and radio interviews on the CBC, the Fan, and local stations in Regina and Calgary, to name a few. Most recently, I participated in the Toronto Civic Action Conference, which brought political thinkers from across the country, including the newly elected mayor of Calgary. And we got some good publicity in it. We got, this is the Toronto Star, was an excellent article showing the mayor of Hamilton and Hazel McCallion and the other special guests. And this one went across the country. My son got a kick out of opening the Globe in London and seeing Mayor McCallion and myself talking about the need to encourage civic cooperation. So we need to get our message out not only locally but to right across the country. That's one of the things that I committed to doing for you. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue to do it. One of the main reasons I'm here this morning is to welcome your input and advice. And I ask for your support to make sure that we finally achieve the potential we've been talking about for so long. And I personally want to thank you for the privilege of serving as your mayor and allowing me this opportunity to speak to you today. Thank you.